Professor Schnell, thank you so much for having us here at Dartmouth. I wanted to ask you, you've just completed your first term as provost here at Dartmouth. How has that gone?
It's going very well. So it's incredibly hectic. The job of the provost is very demanding. So I end up during the transition learning that from dean to provost, so as a dean you have hours of free time, as a provost you have minutes of free time. So every day, but you know, it's good to actually organize yourself, thinking more strategically on how you live your daily life and how you structure your day. You have to be more mindful, but as well more forceful on the objectives and the goals that you want to achieve, not only professionally, but as well personally.
One thing I wanted to ask you is you've come to Dartmouth as provost during what I think is fair to say a time of crisis in higher education in the United States. One indication of this I saw recently, Pew Research found in October that 7 out of 10 Americans think higher ed is headed in the wrong direction. When you hear a statistic like that, how do you react?
Well, the way I reacted, even though I love my job at Notre, and as a very devout Catholic, I wish I wanted to stay in a Catholic university. I felt the moral obligation of leaving Notre Dame and serving on an Ivy to protect higher education. I came primarily here because CM Belliok, President Belliok, so she's very committed to defend higher education, but as well reform it. We have been failing in the United States higher education. That's why the general public and the government are responding negatively. And the Ivies, they have served as a role model in a very negative way on how higher education should be moving forward, and the time for reform has arrived. And I would like to be part of that group of leaders who help to bring back higher education to its original roots. And the roots, they come from almost a Roman Empire. And universities are a Catholic entity, but the foundations come from the liberal arts that were cultivated in the Roman Empire and through the Middle Ages, back to its origin, where what we're focusing is on through beauty and friendships, which are the core missions of a university.
In what ways, you talk about the need for reform, so in what ways do you feel that higher education, perhaps especially at the Ivies, has gone astray?
We have gone astray in the sense that we don't have intellectual diversity as we used to have. We have become very narrowly focused, and we have a lot of what I would say unearned certainty. The faculty members, they have become so certain that they're absolutely right, that they have never questioned their own set of beliefs on whether their expertise is the right way to solve the problems of society. And because we haven't had the diversity to question or challenge the narrow views that we have in campus, it has been harming the way we are serving the society, but as well the academic enterprise. The primary focus is that unearned certainty. And you know, when you have an unearned certainty, so you don't have doubt. When you don't have doubt, you don't have mystery. And when you don't have mystery, you just lack of imagination. Imagination is what actually allows you to operate within the mysterious environments where you are trying to question issues. And the imagination is this general organ of the mind that allows you to do the connections, to do that work. And we have lost it. And we have lost it in many ways. So when you look at what all other academic institutions are doing around the United States, we have become a very good imitator of each other. So the strategic missions and the plans and even the academic subjects we're covering, or even the problems we're trying to solve, they're identical between academic institution to academic institution. And that wasn't happening until recently. It's a new phenomenon. And everyone notices it. It's so obvious. I think that's the primary challenge that we're facing, is this unearned certainty that universities and faculty they have.
You said it's a new phenomenon, and you talked, and hopefully we'll talk a bit more about the roots of a liberal education and a university. But this unearned certainty is a new phenomenon. Where would you point to as kind of an origin from it, or why are we experiencing it now?
I think it's in the 1960s and the 70s, there was a lot of changes. There was a pendulum that swung on the academic institutions, where there was suddenly a change. Academic institutions at the time, people considered it highly conservative, and conservative leaning towards the right side of the political spectrum, and the pendulum swing too far towards the left. And while in the past, the left and the right could live very healthy, an academic and a dialogue lifestyle, in the academic enterprise, when we swing the pendulums towards the left, there was a complete elimination of everything that wasn't of one monolithic dialogue. And that's a challenge that we're having in the academic institutions. Maybe the dialogue, I'm convinced, as a result of, having elected to be provost of an institution, there's still intellectual diversity, but a lot of people are too afraid of actually expressing the intellectual diversity. And they just prefer to focus on their own work rather than speaking and having an open dialogue, because they're afraid of the individuals who have this unearned certainty that they can trigger cancellations, they can make your life very difficult in the academic enterprise or in the job, and then you end up leaving the academic institution or academia in general.
You're talking about this unearned certainty in the context of academia, but of course many of the professors here, they teach as well. So what impact does that unearned certainty have on the education process?
Well, here I'm going to quote our President Belliok. So she says that in the universities we have been focusing on, instead of teaching how to think, we have been teaching the students what to think. And it's the result that the professors have this unearned certainty that they think that they are the holders of the truth. And therefore they are promoting their ideologies or their points of views, instead of providing the tools and the perspectives to the students to actually question and seek the truth. I have a perfect example. So, part of my research is on mathematics, on the mathematical sciences. And in mathematics, we always have this dialogue of whether the mathematics are discovered or they're invented by human beings. And I have two perfect good arguments of why mathematics could be discovered and why mathematics could be invented. And generally when people ask me about it, I present the 2 points of views, and it caused me doubts. So every time I have one, that is discovered and is the result that, you believe in, that there is a legislator, and if there is a legislator, man expects laws, and if man expects laws, those laws are written in mathematical terms. And of course, you believe that mathematics, that expression of the creator. But at the same time, when you look at it from the anthropological point of view, we know that there are societies that understand mathematics in a very different way. For example, there are societies where individuals will tell you, you count 1, you count 2, you count 3, and after 3, they just talk about more. And when you question yourself, is the mathematics that we are using currently in the Western world is an invention that those individuals who can count until 3 and then they would say more, they haven't invented yet. And if we teach them to them, they can actually acquire it. Or it's just that they haven't been able to have the time to make the discoveries, to find that it's creative. And it's a big problem philosophically that people are trying to figure out. And the challenge is that we're not providing to the students the 2 arguments of whether it's creative or what is invented. The faculty member with the unearned certainty, if they're a non-religious person, they will tell you, or they don't believe on the laws of nature, they will tell you it's going to be invented by human beings, without telling you that there is the other option that actually exists. And let the students, through inquiry, and the general public through inquiry, to find out. So university is all about seeking the truth. And we want to cultivate that environment where we provide the tools to the students to think.
I was really struck before, you talked about the relationship between the quest for knowledge and doubt,
Yes.
and then mystery. And
Yes.
it struck me because you're a mathematical biologist, right? I think a field that people might not think terms like doubt or mystery, we think of empiricism and things like that. How do those factors, doubt, mystery, play into your own academic interests and pursuits?
Well, I have this notion of the academic enterprise, at least as a scientist, that is very Platonic or Augustinian, where the only way that we know the universe as human beings is through our senses. So we have a very limited perception of reality. Reality could be much bigger of what our senses allow us to perceive. How do we know that? So I'm capable of seeing with my eyes, and I see a light of a spectrum that is very limited. I know that my cat that I have at home has a wider spectrum, because when my cat and I were walking at home in complete darkness, I'm hitting every single object, while my cat is just walking like it's a walk on the park, so no problems at all. So the reality of the perception that my cat has is bigger and deeper than the one that I do have. And when you look at the animal kingdom, we have the capacity of animals of seeing and observing things that the humans cannot. And of course, if you're somebody who is religious and believes on spiritual beings, we look into the spectrums of those spiritual beings that are capable of observing the objects in its purity. So as a scientist, what I have come to the realization is that every single object that I'm observing is going to be limited by the instrumentations that provide those reflections of reality. I live on a Platonic cave where every academic discipline provides a shadow from the perspective of the discipline. I always use this example that universities are all about the unity of knowledge, because every academic discipline lives on the Plato's cave and looks at an object, the object of the study, from one perspective. You're only looking one part of the shadow. But when it comes to the other academic discipline, they move into a different direction of the cave, and they look at the reflection of the shadow from a completely different perspective. If we have all the academic disciplines that provide senses of what the reality is, we might be getting closer to what the real object is, but still from the human perspective. As a scientist, I realize that whatever I do is limited to the physical perceptions of the instruments that we as scientists we use, which are an extension of our senses, allow me to observe. But I know that it's much more, because, I understand platonically how the universe works. And as a result of that, I have doubts. I have doubts that my senses, the senses that I'm using as a scientist, they are limited. And they don't allow me to see everything. They allow me just to see some imperfect shadows. But at the same time, I know that there are things that are bigger than those that I can sense. And that's where, the doubt comes in, which is very critical for the scholarly work. If you don't have doubt, then what you have is the unearned certainty. Mm-hmm. You want to earn by just working incredibly hard on that process.
Something to connect with something earlier you said before, your vision of reform, or of what higher ed should be, is you mentioned two things, beauty and friendship.
Yes.
And it seems to me that you can't get at the full truth, right, because of your limited vantage point without friendship, right?
Yes.
And that's an interesting way of thinking about the academic enterprise of a university, right? That you are cooperating with these other disciplines in pursuit of the one single truth. You mentioned this unearned certainty, even at places like Dartmouth, perhaps. So how can you cultivate that? How can you help people pursue, truth in friendship and beauty with mystery in an environment where there might be some of those factors already?
Well, the way that, there are three aspects of the academic enterprise, as I mentioned. So the seeking the truth is what we do with the thought process, that we provide the tools to the students to learn and to learn how to be effective thinkers. The beauty is where I think it plays a more important role on the mystery. So beauty creates on, and is discovered or is made by human beings. We can make beauty through music, where we play with sounds through time. We can make beauty through art, or we can just discover beauty through reality, where we observe phenomenon that creates on and impress individuals. Or we can just make beauty through literature, where poetry moves the heart. And that's where the liberals' heart, they play a fundamental role. So while you are trying to seek the truth, the liberals' art, through the rhetoric, through the literature, through the plastic arts, they are cultivating that sense of awe and mystery, that something is reflecting beauty, and you cannot explain it. So many people might have, people would argue that you have a sense of beauty, that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but the reality is that everyone can understand when an object is beauty. You might disagree how beautiful it is from your own perspective, but when you see a beautiful object, when you hear a piece of beautiful music, it moves everyone. And that's where the mystery is cultivated into the academic enterprise. It opens the heart and the imagination in a way that only the technical seek of the truth is impossible to allow it to open. Mm-hmm. And then the friendship is a result that you are in while you are in the process of making beauty or reading beauty or experience beauty, and the discovery through friendship comes in. It's a result that as human beings, if we live in isolation, we're not going to be able either to express or enjoy beauty or discover the truth. The truth would be meaningless in isolation. It has to be an expression of what human beings would like to do together. And I think what I find awesome about the fact that we want to cultivate friendships is that with friendship comes love. And love is an expression of a revealed act of truth. So there are two kinds of truth. There are the truths that we acquire through reasons, but there are the truths that we discover by something that is revealed to us. How do I know that my wife loves me, or my children that love me, or my friends that love me? It's because they tell me so. They're telling me, I love you. It's an act of openness and revelation. And those are kinds of truth that you can only cultivate through the person, which is, as well, what the Catholic Church actually as well believes. So the fact that, we have this divine filiation with God, and God loves us, is a revelation. Why God loves you? Because He wants to. It's an expression that is a truth. And we have in academia that reality as well. So that is expressed primarily through friendship, but as well is expressed by things that are obvious. Sometimes we have revealed through that we acquire through reason, because it's obvious why 1 + 1 is equal to 2. It's just an obvious truth. Mm-hmm. It reveals itself. Mm-hmm. And the acquisition of knowledge is cultivated through friendship, because you have that revelation that comes with friends that allows you to understand that truths are not only acquired by reason, but they are acquired because they are given to you as a gift by somebody else. And in universities, we express that friendship not only through the collaboration in the classroom, but as well on residential halls and in the community life, but as well through sports. Academic institutions, historically, they have sports, not only as an entertainment. There is this conversation that sports are exclusively a luxury and entertainment. It depends on how you do sports, but the reality is that sports are as well the cultivation of friendship and community in a way that makes you unique, that gives you the love for your friends at your institution in a way that you couldn't acquire otherwise.
So concretely, how are you and President Beilock attempting to put this reform into place here at Dartmouth?
Well, the first reform is that we want our students to be taught how to think, not what to think. But as well, the second aspect of friendship through community life is incredibly important. We are building community life in a way that allows to cultivate those friendships and the love for each or other of the students, but for the institution. That is very, very important. And then right in the middle, we have an art district that we have been growing up, where people can experience beauty by going through the theater and the museum. And we want as well the theater and the museum to go out into the residence halls, into the classrooms, so that that expression of awe and mystery can be experienced everywhere in campus. They can experience it itself when they go to the arts, but the arts as well are coming to them in different ways. And our mission is literally focusing on those three aspects. So first, focusing on how we teach our students and our faculty to seek the truth more effectively through the community life, to cultivate friendship and strengthen the links between our students and our alumni, but as well through the expression of the arts and the liberal arts education, where we want to train every single student not only to be an effective user of the technical knowledge they acquire in the academic discipline if they're going to be an engineer, but we want to be an engineer who can read poetry. We want to have an engineer who understands politics. We want to have an engineer who understands literature. Why? Because we don't want them to be trapped on a Platonic cave where they're only observing the object from one direction. We want them to be able to walk through the cave and see the object reflect from different perspectives and realize that every time they stand in one place, they always have an imperfect representation of reality. The reality is much bigger of what they think originally. And in that way, we create that certainty that it has to be earned, that it has to be work. Because you know that every certainty that you will have is going to be imperfect in one way or another, because we're human beings.
You mentioned your Catholic faith and also the Catholic intellectual heritage. How does that come into play personally for you in your work, even at an Ivy League school like Dartmouth?
Well, I love higher education. I love it because, probably I have this gift that God has given me, that I'm just a naturally curious person. I like to learn. I'm always doing research. I love to teach, although I'm not teaching that much anymore. But at the same time, I understand historically the university is a Catholic invention. Even though people think that the Catholic Church was very narrow in the Middle Ages, the gift that we receive from the Middle Ages is the universities. And the universities have provided the foundations of what has made modern society flourish. And even to this day, we still have the results of the Catholic and the Trinity all across the university mission. I always joke that, people don't realize this, but we have undergraduate degrees, master degrees, and PhDs. And my Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So we have assistant professors, associate professors, and full professors, 3 ranks. Then my Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So when we give a university professor the most distinguished professorship they can get, we give them a cathedra, which is actually the chair that the bishops they sit on because it has an armrest. We allow them to speak ex cathedra with the authority of the university. The foundations of the university are very much the foundations that the Catholic Church provided. So we did that precisely because the Catholic Church, as a gift, wanted to educate the society to be more fruitful, to allow the individuals to flourish through the liberal arts. I feel very proud that I continue to be part of that tradition as a Catholic. Whether that's something that now that institutions have become very secular, they realize, well, the secular can live the secular life of the academic enterprise in the way they want to. But for me, I feel that I'm part of the heritage that has been moving through the centuries that I would like to keep alive and make sure that we serve the way that universities have been serving through history, which hasn't changed that much. What has changed is the attitude that we have over the last few years.
On a personal level, do you view this work as a vocation?
It's a vocation, so it's a calling. Definitely, it doesn't pay well. If you want to become a university professor, it's not the way that you are going. It's not the kind of profession that you would love and make a lot of money. So the reality is that you live a relatively good life, but it's not what most of the world lives. It's a profession as well where you live from rejection. So you're rejected by reality every day because you're trying to discover things that are hidden by the mystery of creation. God has created, so if you look at it from the Catholic perspective, God has created this universe and has made man and woman work very hard to gain the truth. It takes a lot of work. And you're trying to solve problems that they don't want to be solved by themselves because they're hidden within the mysteries of creation. And sometimes you can just unveil that, and it takes a lot of hard work, and you need to make sure that it's right. And the way that you make sure that it's right is that you send it to your colleagues, and your colleagues, they start to put doubt into the ideas that you put together. They open holes, and you realize that it's not right. They reject your theory, and then you have to go back and start again. So it's an incredibly difficult profession. You're not only not incredibly well compensated, but you're constantly fighting against a reality that doesn't want to reveal itself. And you have to work hard to earn that possibility of revealing those mysteries of creation.
It's beautiful. One thing I wanted to talk about as well, you're the provost at Dartmouth now, but before that, you were the dean of the College of Science at Notre Dame for 5 years. Thinking back on that experience, where do you think Catholic higher ed is at right now?
Let me tell you, I think one of the challenges that I think all academic institutions are suffering, but particularly Catholic educations, the academic rank system has been incredibly harmful for higher education. We have become good imitators of each other because if you want to be well ranked, you need to follow the criteria that an external entity that is not part of higher education, that is not composed of scholars, is driving what it takes to be excellent. And excellence in this case is having a high number in the ranks. It has forced Catholic universities to have good quality faculty members and attract the students to play the rankings game. And when you play the rankings game, you are reduced to dilute your mission. Suddenly, for example, typical examples of what the ranks they look at. The ranks look at what is the proportion of first college generation you admit, the students on geographical diversity, on socio-economical diversity, on Pels. These are very noble things. But when every academic institution does the same thing, you dilute yourself. And for example, the Catholic institution is good that tries to do all this diversity. But at the same time, when you try to do all that diversity, sometimes you need to compromise the Catholic mission, like diluting the number of students who are Catholic who would come to the institution. It's good to have non-Catholic students at the university. It's part of the process of conversion. But at the same time, the Catholic university has to be first a university and have the spirit, the Catholic spirit to be Catholic. And to do that, you need to have a significant number of Catholic scholars and students to have that spirit in place. And I think that's the major threat, that we to be excellent, the Catholic universities, they want to become more secular. And by secularizing yourself, then you lose your way. The reality is that not until recently, before the ranks were actually very hot, and is the thing that we do these days, universities that were very proud of distinguishing themselves to be unique. And I experienced this through my academic career, even though I don't look that old. 30 years ago, when I started to give seminars and go into the academic round, I would go to University X, and I would give my seminar. And if I give the same seminar in University Y, the experience that I would have by visiting those two academic institutions was completely different. The kind of ways I would be interrogated were very different, because each institution has its motto and its speciality, and you will be punched in the face from the perspective of that university, challenge you to think in a completely different way. And these days, I give the same seminar in University X and University Y, and I don't know where I am. And
Because
because
they're not distinctive.
They're not distinctive. And it's the ranks that actually have forced that. But at the same time, it's the unearned certainty that has triggered that. Where, when you look at the strategic mission plans on Catholic and non-Catholic universities, or all the secular universities are all the same. Everyone is interested in democracy. Everyone is interested on the arts. Everyone is interested on climate change. And honestly, if we all are working on those problems, so it's fine. They're fantastic transcendental problems. But at the same time, the way that you become exceptional is by just being the best at the very thing that you do. And Catholic universities should be focusing on what makes them Catholic. So if it were for me, the mission of a Catholic university should be creating the future doctors of the Catholic Church.
And doctors, of course, meaning not medical doctors.
Not
only,
medical
but
doctors, not PhD doctors. Is the individuals who are actually creating the knowledge that the Catholic Church is using and the magisterium is using for driving the Catholic spirit and life and religion. Is what, we have the latest academic being elected. Catholic Bishop is Newman. So he was professor at the University of Oxford. He was as well a religious priest, and he's a Catholic saint. But he becomes a member of this very unique club because he has created new knowledge that allows the Catholic Church to be strengthened. We wouldn't have the Second Vatican Council if Newman wouldn't have thought very carefully on how important the role of the lay plays on the Catholic Church, and that you can achieve sainthood not only by becoming religious, but by just living your ordinary life. He played the foundation for that. Great Catholic institutions should be cultivating the tradition of the knowledge that is going to cultivate the future doctors of the Catholic Church.
in your 5 years at Notre Dame, did you sense that was part of the goals at all?
Well, I don't think, with the exception of a few pontifical universities, and the challenge is that the pontifical universities are literally just focused on journalism, law, philosophy, and theology. Mm-hmm. No other institution is actually thinking about this. No, I don't think there is any other Catholic university that is trying to create doctors of the church, of the Catholic Church, that are physicians, or doctors of the Catholic Church who are academic administrators, or doctors of the Catholic Church who are mathematicians. We don't know where that doctrine of the future doctrine that is required to strengthen the Catholic faith is coming from. Santa Teresa of the Avila, it comes from literature. So St. John of the Cross comes from poetry. A Catholic university should be cultivating poets that can become future doctors of the Catholic Church. That's what I think it should be the mission. That should be the distinguishing factor. And what they have done is that they're trying to compete with secular universities, not serving what ultimately is what could maintain them in the long term. That would be my general criticism of Catholic higher ed, that we have just lost the way.
Just trying to be like everyone else.
And again, it's the result of the ranks, because students are selecting institutions, and Notre Dame is doing very well on the ranks. It's because they're just playing the numbers game on how do I get there. Is that a noble view? It's incredibly noble. So because you can have some of the Catholic spirit within those secular enterprises, but you should be doing much more. And I think that's the part that is missing. And there is this general fear that if you focus on this creation of the future doctors of the Catholic Church, then you won't be well ranked. The reality is that you just need to be internationally recognized for something that you do so well that everyone notices. That's what makes a great scholar. Great scholarship comes as a result that when I read somebody, it just blows me away. It surprised me. And I might not agree with their perspectives, but it's that new knowledge that is so unique that opens the mind and the heart in a way that wouldn't open otherwise. That's what great scholarship is all about. It's opening the mind and the human heart. And it has to be unique. You
mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that you left Notre Dame, which I think for many Catholic academics might be kind of a dream job in some way, but you left to be a part of the reform of higher ed, and in particular in the Ivy League. I think there are many people right now who question sort of elite institutions and the role they're going to play in this country's future. Do you still think that the Ivy League schools like Dartmouth have an important role to play?
It's important. So, I find very puzzling when people critique elite institutions. If you critique elite institutions, you should be criticizing then professional sport games. They're elite by nature. So we flourish on eliteness. Eliteness is very important to create and promote excellence. So what makes a country great, what makes a company great, what makes a university great, what makes a football team or a baseball team great is that they're elite. They're very selective on the individuals that they put on charge of playing the ball, carrying the ball, hitting the bat, governing the system, running the company. Eliteness is all about being excellence. And if you have the Catholic perspective, why you want to be excellence? You are doing it for the glory of God and creation. You are fully committed that the only way that you can serve God, and if you are somebody who is very secular, the best way that you can serve society, if you're a baseball player, is being the baseball player that is in the planet. You provide joy. You enjoy the job that you do. So elite is incredibly important, and trying to dilute elite institutions because they just have committed over the last few years this mistake of having unearned certainty is a mistake. We need the elite institutions in the same way that we need the elite players on the soccer team, on the football team, and the baseball team, or we need the elite individuals leading AI or the new software tools and the new companies that create energy. Eliteness is critical. Otherwise, we're not going to have a world where we want to live on.
Just two last questions. You mentioned AI, and I learned that Dartmouth is actually the place where AI was coined.
Yes, we're very proud of that. So
a long legacy and obviously an important role to play moving forward. When you think about AI in higher education, what priorities come to mind for you?
Well, AI is the inflection point in society. It's a technology that is going to be changing the way we're going to be operating in many ways. We're very proud here at Dartmouth that we are the place where there was a workshop 70 years ago where the term AI was coined and the future of the academic discipline was established. The technology now is here and it's a reality. It's a reality that we need to embrace. People, they tend to be very afraid of new technologies because they don't see themselves very well reflected on those. And they don't understand how they can amplify themselves through the technology. Technologies are naturally good when they're amplifying what we will do under natural conditions. For example, a good technology is a bike. I would have my feet to move around. I can run, but if I pedal, I'm going to be moving faster. It's a good technology because it's amplifying what my body would do naturally. AI serves in the same way. I could be actually reading the books and taking a lot of time to acquire the information, or I can use AI to amplify the way that I'm searching through all the current knowledge to find things that would take me probably months to figure it out.
But is there a concern that some uses of AI aren't amplifying sort of human qualities,
Exactly,
but are replacing,
They're
right?
replacing.
Like judgment, analysis, these kind of unique human factors, creation even?
Exactly, and that's where the fundamental problem lies, is that how we're going to be using the technology in order to amplify what human beings would do in natural conditions. If we use the technology, for example, if a student uses the technology to write the essay without using the imagination, without seeking the through, then it's replacing what you will naturally have to do, but replacing as a human being. You're not anymore a representative of yourself, but you're a representation of that object. The technology is there just to amplify what you will do very well. If you let the technology do your job, then it's not anymore you. It's something that in fact is mediocre. And let me tell you why. AI is pretty good at actually finding what on average is known. It's a stochastic technology that uses averages of what you will find in the literature. It's never going to find you the two extremes. The two extremes you need to find yourself. You need to actually complement what the AI technology gives you to do it. But you cannot let replace you as well, because in the moment it replaces you, then the human character and the uniqueness that allows you to express yourself would be lost. The message, your voice. And at the same time, you cannot use it for the replacement of what you require with hard work to acquire. The reason I do remember, for example, names of people, because I work very hard to interact with them. If I wouldn't be interacting with human beings on a daily basis, I wouldn't remember their names. And the same thing would happen with AI. If I decide to write the essay and then hand the homework as written by AI, I wouldn't remember what it was there, because it didn't took the hard sweat and the blood that you have to do to do the work and acquire the knowledge. You acquire it when it comes from the hard work and the human heart that you put into the task. You need to be using the AI in that way. And I think what's going to be happening in higher education is that we need to be educating the students on when they have to use AI effectively and when they shouldn't be using it at all. It's very important that we tell to the students, under these conditions, if you use AI, you're just on the losing end. Because in the moment we unplug the computer, you're going to be lost. And we don't want you to be lost as a human being. But on the other hand, we need as well to find ways on how to evaluate the students that have this access to the technology. I do think that, in fact, AI is going to force us to go back to the medieval way of evaluation.
Written, oral?
Oral primary. So the fundamental challenge that we have with AI, that AI is very good at actually solving single disciplinary tasks. If you ask AI, solve this mathematical equation or this problem, or tell me how to solve this solution, it can very quickly go through the textbooks and acquire the knowledge and give you the right answer. But it's terrible at open questions, what I would call the transcendental questions, which is what actually drives the interest of humanity and the academic enterprise. But as well, it's terrible on using the imagination. And the only way that we can evaluate the creativity, the imagination of the students is through an interrogation, a dialogue between the friendship that one student would have with the other one, with the friendship in the classroom that the faculty member would have with the student, and having this dialogue to figure out if without the help of AI, you truly know how to think, not what to think. And AI becomes a technology that tells you what to think, not how to think. So you need to be actually using a different mechanism on the evaluation process to figure that out. Some institutions these days, they're using the blue books, where they just don't want to receive any more computer type messages, because you actually can figure out if the student knows what they do. But I think the viva voce, the oral exam, is going to become much more important. And why? Because technology and the phones are making us less humans than AI. The only way that we can create the future of the best students is through that human interaction, looking at students and the faculty face to face, having this dialogue, knowing how the expressions are going to make you a better human being, but at the same time, whether you're with passion saying the knowledge that you have acquired, and you are truly convinced that what you're saying, it can be held as a truth. That is going to be a phenomenon that is unique, and that's what, for example, the old universities created with the tutorial system, where the faculty member would go to the classroom. The tutorial system was launched in the moment books were widely open and the students would go to the library, and the faculty member realized now that the student can read any book. Because in the origins of the university, the word professor was a lecturer. Was a lecturer because you will take the only book available in the university, you will stand in the classroom, you will read it, you will close it, take it to your office, and nobody else would have access to it. When the books when the printed press was created and books were widely available, faculty needed to find a way. Well, are they cheating because they have access to the book? The tutorial system was invented, where now the students, they have to come to the classroom without the book present, and you interrogate the students about the knowledge they have acquired by reading the books. We have to do the same thing now with AI. We have no choice. And I love it because now the education has to become much more personalized. The faculty member would be forced to know the student by name. And they would be able to actually craft an education, which I think is the whole goal. So educate means to take you off from the darkness and liberate you from all the obscurity of ignorance. But the ignorance that every individual has is different because we come from different backgrounds. Only through the tutorial, through the personalized learning, is that you allow one individual to actually flourish from the ashes. Like, the University of Notre actually believes that education is a work of resurrection. So how you can become a better version of yourself? Only personalized learning would allow you to do that. Because every single individual comes from a family that they provide an education in one area, but you have weakness in other ones. The tutorial system, that personalized education, is going to help us.
Just one final question, because I know you've spoken about this before. But I want to end maybe with an opportunity for you to give some advice. Imagine there's a young Catholic person out there, very intellectually gifted, also serious about their faith, and they're thinking about pursuing an academic career. We've talked a lot about the difficulties facing academia, but what would you say to someone like that?
Do not be afraid. I think the fundamental point, there's this misconception that if you are Catholic or you are conservative, if you don't hold the views that most of the people have in universities, you're not going to be welcome. It's complete false. So if you are really good at what you do, if you are excellent, everyone is going to respect you for what you contribute, even if it's different from what everyone else does. I think Robbie George at Princeton, he said the same thing recently in an interview from the Chronicle of Higher Education. He's Catholic, he's very conservative. And he has never felt that he has been opposed by anybody. People might not like what he has to say. Sometimes people don't like what I have to say. But honestly, that's the beauty of academia. I want people not to like what I say. I want to be challenged. Just don't be afraid and pursue it. And remember that, as a Catholic, so you come because you have this vocation, that you're playing part of the creative mystery. And you're helping to reveal the mystery of creation through the academic enterprise. In my opinion, there isn't a better way to be closer to God than actually doing that. So helping to reveal the mystery that once we fell from paradise and we came to earth and we were surrounded by this seat of ignorance and our brain is all clouded, being able to bring back the purity of creation through the academic enterprise is a very special vocation that is very much into what the Catholic spirit is. One of the aspects of the Catholic spirit. You come here to reveal the truth. It's never going to be perfect because, of course, we're human beings, and whatever I think is true right now, somebody else 10, 15, 100 years later is going to say what Santiago wasn't right. But that process is a unique vocational process that it plays a fundamental role and is an apostolic at the same time. Because, Catholics, we believe that the truth ultimately is the Word, and the Word is God. You are just playing that act of revelation, of giving it to the people. It's so special, it's so unique. And I don't think we have sufficient Catholics in the academic enterprise. I have said this on multiple occasions. When you look at most of the Catholic universities, they have become professional training schools. People go there to actually acquire professional degrees, and they make a lot of influence in their own professions. But we don't have sufficient Catholics taking positions of power. You become somebody who has a position of power when you are in an elite institution, that you just lead the future of knowledge, and you serve as a light and beacon for society as an academic. We need to have, Catholic scholars that become journalists. Journalism is incredibly important. And having that Catholic spirit is there. We need to have more Catholic politicians. Somehow Catholics, they have retreated. And it's something historical in the United States because many Catholics were Irish and they came from a very poor background and they wanted to have a profession to live off their families. We have now the same thing with Hispanics, that they're incredibly poor, they're Catholic, and they just want their children to lift up from poverty by becoming professionals. And the African immigrants are going to be very Catholic. It's the same thing. Catholics, they tend to come from very extreme poverty in the United States, and they chose professions that do very helpful work for society instead of positions of influence where we can change the spirit of how everyone else lives through our work. And I want to encourage every young person, woman, man, who think that their vocation is on discovering the truth and teaching, that it's a very beautiful experience. You're going to be playing an important role as well. You're going to have a position of influence. Where I always say, in my life, God only gave me 2 biological children, but I have hundreds in the classroom that I have incentivized that unique spirit that it only comes from me, that is quite special and unique. And at the same time, I'm leaving books and papers from my own perspective that as well, they might influence future generations. It's a unique and a special possession to be in. So I want to encourage everyone who is a Catholic and is afraid, don't be afraid, do it.
Beautiful. Professor Santiago Schnell, what a pleasure speaking with you.
It's a pleasure, son. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.